everybody, welcome to Catamaranfreedom.com. My name is Gabriel, and today I would like to speak to you about the price difference between monohulls and multi-hulls. That would be catamarans, okay? So, looking around, I've been looking for boats for quite a while. I'm looking to buy a catamaran, and I'm doing a lot of research, many hours to try to figure out, okay, how can I get the most catamaran for my money, okay? And everywhere I look, I see like, oh, the catamarans are always more expensive. They're more expensive, and you should just go for a monohull. So I did a lot of research, and I like the data. And I compile a lot of data, and I put it into a table. And as far as I understand, catamarans are not more expensive than monohulls, which is great. I like that because I'm looking for a catamaran. So right? Let's look at the data. What does the data say? If we're looking in the 1990 to the 1995 era, and we look at 30-foot catamarans, we would find that the most expensive one I found was $79,000, and the cheapest one was $35,000. So that's a 35 to 79 spectrum, right? And if we look at the monohulls, we go from 6,000 all the way up to 134,000. So okay, so the catamarans are in here. They're both they're not as cheap, but they're also not as expensive for a 19 to 95 year catamaran in the 30-foot length range, okay? The monohulls are cheaper and more expensive. So, okay, we got that now. If we're looking at the 40-foot catamarans in the same range of years, we would see 78,000 to 169,000 for those boats, for the catamarans, 40-foot. And if we're looking at the monohulls, they go from 19,000 to 303,000, right? So there's a bigger range of the monohulls. They go from cheaper to more expensive. And we'll look into the details why that is so in a little bit, okay? So we're looking at a little bit newer boats from 2015 to 2019. We're looking at the 30-foot catamaran. They go from 120,000 to 254,000, right? Okay, and then we have the monohulls. They go from 40,000 to 278,000. Okay, I think you're seeing the pattern here, right? Okay, let's look at the 40-foot. The catamaran starts out at 169,000 to 499. And the monohulls from 112 to 408. A little bit like this. Okay, so why do we have 499,000? Why is that the cap? Well, that's because that's where I put the cap, right? Because most people are not looking for boats above that price range. That's another type of boat. They get way more expensive. They're way more exclusive. They're way more different type of boats, right? So I excluded everything above 500,000 US dollars. They just went out the window, okay? So basically what we're seeing here is like the range is, there's a bigger range from the highest to the lowest on a monohull. And the catamarans are in a shorter range, right? But they still have the middle range. You can still find both boats. Same length, same year, same price, okay? So what is the difference? Let's look at what the difference is. Looking around and doing like a lot of research, because as you all know, and then, like you're probably doing right now, there goes a lot of time into figuring out what type of boat you want and how you can actually afford it. And the one thing I've figured out is the most important thing when it comes to price is the mechanical, the rigging, and like the cosmetics. I would say those are the three main components. Like all the mechanical stuff, engines are working. If the engines are broke or they're like in bad condition, it's a lot of many thousands of dollars, right? Same with the standing rigging. So many dollars if that's broken. And also it seems to be like cosmetic. If something is like working good, the engine is good, everything is good, the rigging is good, but it looks like shit, it seems to pull down the price a lot. Which is interesting because that's the kind of boat you want to buy, right? You want to buy something that is, it looks like shit, but you just scrub it off and make it look pretty, and boom, get a great boat. That's what you want to look for. So I would say those three are the biggest ones. And then there's some other perspectives which I think is really interesting. So I would like to talk about the history of the boat. So for me, it's a big issue is getting a safe boat. It's like, I feel safe traveling around the world with this. And I want to do offshore stuff, and you want to make sure it has like a good history and stuff to it. So there are some boats that are like obviously super good, like the Leopards and all that, Lagoon 380 and whatever. It's just good boats. Everybody knows that. Not a big deal. But if you look at the like the smaller ones, like the Prouds, or I'm not sure how to pronounce this, but Iroquois maybe. I'll put it in the over here, down here somewhere, and you can read it and you can tell me how off I'm with the with the pronunciation of the Iroquois. Okay, so it has like a bad reputation online. Whenever you go on the forum, you put in Iroquois, Iroquois, and people say like, oh, they flip over all the time. They like everywhere. It's like, oh, it's a death trap basically. So like, okay, I told you I like data, right? So I'm starting looking around like, okay, what can I find? What type of data? So I find a lot of data about, okay, how do you know if it's a good boat? Like, how would you measure the length according to the beam, and how do you see if like it has potential to flip over or not? So you can actually calculate the data, and you can see if like, oh, this has, it has tendency to maybe flip, or maybe this is obviously an unsafe boat. So the data is in, and it's not more unsafe than a lot of other stuff like that, as far as I understand. And then I looked into like, okay, how many of these boats capsize? Doesn't seem to be a lot of boats like that. So history has, I think, a big impact on the boat's price, because if people talk bad about it, of course it's going to be like cheaper. But that might be like an opportunity for you and me to kind of get that boat, right? Well, the data says it's safe. There's actually no real true data about it being capsizing often or flipping over often, so it's probably safe, right? So yeah, if you shoot me a mail or something, and I'll try to explain it a little bit more in depth, or if you check out my webpage, the catamaranfreedom.com, I'll try to explain everything over there. So we talked about the price difference, and it's basically a range difference. We've talked about the history of a boat. We talked about how people talk about a boat, how that is connected to the price. So the last thing, when I'm looking at it, okay, so maybe blah 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 blah, but if you compare a new boat, like you compare a new 30-foot boat, a new monohull, the catamaran should be more expensive, right? It could be. I mean, there's a lot of building materials, right? That makes sense. Like you have to, building a monohull is basically building a catamaran is basically like building two monohulls. So one hull, and then you fix them together and you have like a catamaran, right? So okay, that makes sense. But there are so many other aspects, like why a boat would cost more to build. Like what type of material is more important than how much, how well built it is, and the way they built it. There's like so many other things. So the conclusion I take away from this is that there's a price difference in quality, not so much as if it is a catamaran or a monohull.